There's a million different ways to get new customers and to get more meetings. But the avenue that's always been most effective for me from my previous business, it's how we landed some of the biggest customers in the world: Bank of America, Amazon, Apple, Goldman Sachs, MasterCard, Under Armour, you name it. We got them all from cold outreach. We didn't know them. We didn't get a connection. We just cold emailed them.
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance-based private therapy practice and a multi-six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. I don't have a therapist, but I have a really cool guest. I'm excited to introduce you guys to him and hear his story. His name's Adam Rosen. He's got a super cool story. He's started startups. He's sold startups. He's a digital nomad. He's got tips and tricks for all us digital nomads out there. And I also like the entrepreneurship. You know, we talk about that a lot on this podcast. A lot of us therapists, we have our private practices, but we want multiple income streams because we don't want to just do that one-to-one client kind of thing. So it's exciting to have a digital nomad, an entrepreneur, a person that does startups come on and talk to us about this whole thing and how we can mesh it together. So Adam, I'd love if you would introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about you, and then let's chit chat.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, first, Kim, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
You're welcome. Yeah, glad to have you.
So from my side, just a quick background. I never held a real job. You can call it real job, quote unquote. Coming out after college, I started my first company about 3 weeks before I graduated. I did a 1-year MBA at my college, which was just outside of Boston. That's when I started my first company. I had that company for about 5 years, and I lived the total opposite of a digital nomad life. Like the way I always learned about entrepreneurship was you have to be in one spot. You have to be at the office all day, every day. And that was the approach I took. And I'm very grateful that I did, but it was the complete opposite. We were based in Boston, and for a large stretch of it, and I don't say this to brag about it because I don't think it's necessarily the best thing, but it was 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. On Sundays, I would give myself a little bit of a break. I'd go in at 9 a.m., be there till 6 p.m. So that was like the lifestyle that I lived. We did sell the company back in 2019. Now, one thing I always want to make clear, because I feel like the startup world is way over glamorized, is while we did have an exit, it was not the exit that any entrepreneur hopes of and dreams of when they go into the world of entrepreneurship. But it was an exit nonetheless. And that's when I first moved out to Hawaii. Then I bounced around. I had a couple of real estate developments. And then I started my current business, email outreach company, which is a lead generation agency, back in 2021. And we've been doing that for about 2.5 years. And my co-founder and I in that business were the same co-founders of my previous tech startup. And we've been running this as a digital business. So since November of 2021, I've been traveling the world, living out of my suitcase, going from place to place.
Oh, it's so fun. I love it. So, I'm curious, like when you say the startup is not like as glamorized as it was. So are you saying like maybe you sold it and it wasn't like this huge payday that most people dream of? Because I wonder about that myself. I've got 15 income streams. Like, how do you know when it's time to sell? Do you wait to be able to have that big payday, or do you like to just do startups and then just pass them on to somebody else and then do another startup? Because I'm kind of like that. I love the idea. I love getting it off the ground. I love setting it up, but then like the running it forever doesn't really appeal to me as much. So I'm just curious about that part of it, like the process and how do you decide to sell and why did you sell and all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an interesting way of looking at a business, because the way you look at it, Kim, is I think a great way to look at it of, hey, I don't want to do this forever. I want to build it to sell it. And that's one of the key things I learned from mentors when I had my previous startup was, hey, build to sell from the start. And that was one of the areas we didn't do a good enough job on. Because when I first started it, and I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed entrepreneur. I was 22 years old. It was, hey, IPO or bust, billionaire or bust. That was the mindset I had going into it versus like, hey, let's get a single and then, keep stacking singles as a baseball reference. Mm-hmm. Now, the way I look at it is I always build to sell them. I encourage every entrepreneur to build to sell, because if you do that effectively, you're going to have a few options. One option is you could sell the company. The
Yeah.
second option, though, is, hey, if someone is willing to buy your asset from you, that means you've most likely built something of value. And if you
Mm,
built something of value, then you'll have the opportunity to continue scaling that thing of value. So I think it's important to have that mindset of build to sell, and then let the life play out how it's supposed to. But the
mm,
way I look at it is to take it as far as you believe you can, as
mhm.
far as you're adding value, and then maybe it makes sense to hand it off to somebody else to take it to that next level.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because I definitely I get passionate about I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. It sounds like you are too. I get really passionate about something, super excited about it, and then it's like, okay, I'm over it now. I built it. It's helpful. It's useful, but I'm ready to do something else. So I kind of, I have that personality a little bit. So I like what you're saying. Like start it with the idea that you're just going to get rid of it eventually and make money off it and be successful. Of course, it's going to help people, but then, like you said, just hand it over to somebody else that's maybe really passionate about like that long term handling of a company kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so rare. I mean, there's so few companies we see where the founder is still running the company.
Oh, good
So
point.
rare. And, like one of the few examples probably today is Facebook or Meta with Mark Zuckerberg. He's still running it. He was obviously one of the
Yeah.
founders, but it's very rare that you see the founder continue running the company as the business evolves into 7, 8, 9, 10 figure range, because the skills of being a founder and starting something are different than scaling. The way I look at building business is always about learning. There
Yeah.
was a ton that I learned from that first startup, even though financially, I wasn't retired on a beach in Hawaii at 27 years old, but the learning I got was so valuable. And
Mm.
same with my current business. And, we just bought a newsletter business, which is now helping me scale into other opportunities that we're seeing. That's a digital nomad business, the
Oh, cool.
nomadcloud.com, for anyone who's maybe subscribed or wants to subscribe to that. But I see a lot of stuff as you learn from it and then you see where it goes. Maybe it means you keep scaling it. Maybe it means you sell it off. But either way, that'll be a win if you get to that. That'll be a good problem to have.
It's so cool. So, can we talk a little bit about that? Because when we did our pre-interview, you mentioned like this business that you're in and that it's like cold email lead generation, which I found super interesting because, as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, like starting new things, you have to start a whole new business. You have to build a new business. You have to, traditionally you're supposed to do that. Like no trust factor, you're supposed to build an audience so they're warmed up to you and that whole thing. But when you said cold email lead generation, that like actually perked my ears a lot because I think that's the dream for most of us. It's like, how can I structure a cold email that's going to get me leads like immediately I can maybe skip some of that nurturing the audience part that comes with the entrepreneurship thing. And even for therapists listening, there's networking involved, there's marketing, there's like warming up that audience so you can get more client referrals. So I just curious if maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that, like some tips or tricks around that, and also, how people can reach out to you if they want help with that part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, number one, we all love warm leads. Like, look, if
Mm,
my calendar was full of referrals every single day and warm leads
mhm.
every single day, I would rather that than cold. Of course, those are warmer leads. They have a higher likelihood to buy.
Yeah.
However, for the majority of us, we're not getting that. Unless
Mhm.
you're Apple or Amazon or Goldman Sachs, these massive brands, we have to be proactive. We have to find ways to find more customers. And there's a million different ways to get new customers and to get more meetings, but the avenue that's always been most effective for me from my previous business, it's how we landed some of the biggest customers in the world: Bank of America, Amazon, Apple, Goldman Sachs,
Wow.
MasterCard, Under Armour, you name it. We got them all from cold outreach. We didn't know them. We didn't get a
Wow.
connection. We just cold emailed them. With my current business, we've had over 60 customers at this point for a full service agency, and
Mhm.
over 30 of them, I think it's 34 or 35 at this point, have come from just doing cold email outreach to get them as new customers. So I just look about my business alone, we would be a fraction of where we are today if we didn't do the cold outreach. And there's
Wow.
nothing really unique about my business of why we should be able to convert any more than any other business. So for anybody listening to this, if you just think about cold outreach, because it does have sometimes an ugly connotation to it, like
Yeah.
people can see it as spam or as ugly. And I understand that. I get that. But there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. But if you
Mhm.
just simply look at it as cold email as a way to connect person A to person B.
Yeah.
If you just look at it as a tool to connect to somebody else, it can be a great way to create more connections, to create more business. And the nice thing about cold email versus, let's say, doing Instagram ads
Hmm.
is you can get hyper targeted. So the more you know about who your ideal customer is, who your ideal partner is, you can just get an email list with those exact folks, write copy that's targeted towards them, and of course, hopefully set up a meeting through that.
Nice. That's amazing. So is that what your company does? Like, hey, we'll give you a lead list and we're also going to give you like this awesome copywriting to help you like really nurture that experience, that first email that really brings them in. Is that kind of what you guys do to help people get to that point that are trying to send cold emails? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have two main ways we work with our partners. One way is
Okay.
basically they just give us the keys, we get them on meetings. So we just do everything from creating the domains, the emails, getting the email lists, writing the copies, sending the emails, managing the
Yeah.
inbox, booking the meetings on our customers' calendars. All they need to do is show up to the meeting. That's the primary way we've worked with our customers from the start. But over the last 6 or 7 months, we've created more of a DIY option as the cold email world has changed dramatically. They're just it's so much more complex today in 2024 than it was 6, 7, 8 months ago. So we created a DIY option where we have a mastermind where we train people on how to leverage cold email to get them more sales meetings, as well as AI. We were talking about AI earlier, how to leverage AI, cold email to grow their business. So we have a DIY. Of course, that's less money. And then we have a full service where they just have to show up to the meeting and we do everything else.
Wow. That's so cool. Yeah, we were talking before I hit record because most of my listeners know I'm obsessed with AI, but we were talking about that too. So, and you had mentioned building GPTs. Is that for this business or is the GPT for the traveling stuff and brokering deals and that sort of thing? So I want to get into that too.
Yeah, we do a lot around AI, and it kind of started with we write email copy for all of our customers, and it was my co-founder that would always do that, and it would take a lot of time. Writing a thoughtful email can take a lot of time. So we created a cold email generator. This was probably 18 months ago, before ChatGPT was
Oh,
really well known. And
awesome.
of course, with ChatGPT, we started to get more into AI and learning about it. So we built out a GPT that will rewrite our email copy better than we ever could in our style that converts best for our customers. So we've created these things called GPTs. And one of the GPTs that we created, though, is for travel. And we share with through our digital nomad newsletter, our community, which is now over 15,000 folks, people that are digital nomads or interested in being a digital nomad, because we've saved, I kid you not, tens of thousands of dollars on Airbnbs. Because when I travel, especially with my co-founder, we'll stay at a lot of different Airbnbs and we'll do long-term rentals, a month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months in the stay. And we have a copy that we'll send to the Airbnb host to negotiate deals. And a lot of times we'll save, on the low end, 10% on rent, sometimes 30 or more percent on rent. And we share through this GPT a way where people can just plug in some information and you'll get the exact style that we use to save us a bunch of money on our Airbnbs that we stay in.
That is awesome. And you said you're going to share that, right?
Yeah, I'll put in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, that's so cool. So tips about that. Let's talk just a little bit about that because you do have this brand with the cold email, but you've also got this nomad brand. So can we talk about the nomad brand and like what it is and how people can subscribe to it? But also, I want your tips and tricks around this Airbnb thing because I live in Airbnbs and I would love to save money. So I'd love to hear your suggestions for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as my co-founder and I for the last, better part, really almost 3 years now, we've been traveling full time as we run this business. And one of the things that I hear a lot about, I'm sure you do too, Kim, living the lifestyle that you live, is I'm sure a lot of people in your network reach out to you and they're like, how do you do that? How do you build a business and travel the world? Because it's
Mhm.
kind of like, how do you have your cake and eat it too? So,
Right.
so many people will reach out to us just saying, how do you do this? What tips do you have? Either to start my own business or to work for somebody else, but do it remotely. So we've
Mhm.
wanted to build some type of travel brand to help people that want to travel the world, but also grow professionally. Because for me, if I just traveled, that wouldn't be interesting to me. I mean, it'd be
Right.
interesting. Sure, you could see beautiful parts of the world, but I need that professional growth as well. So I need
Same.
both. And I know a lot of people, Kim, like you and I, that have that same type of desire. So we've been
Yeah.
hungry to find how can we help people add value in this way. And we stumbled across this newsletter called it's the nomadcloud.com. So a few months back, when we really liked the copy, or we really liked the content that they would share, we liked their structure, we liked their brand. So we just reached out to the owner of it, and then we ended up buying the newsletter with my
Wow.
co-founder as well as my sister, who also works with me with my lead gen company. So we bought that newsletter. We grew it from 5,000 subscribers to now over 15,000 subscribers in just a few months. And we're excited about where the brand can continue to go, over the coming months and coming years.
I can't wait to subscribe. That's awesome. Sounds like it's right up my alley. So I'm definitely going to go subscribe to that. That's pretty cool. So you just were interested in it. And you just reached out to the owner and said, hey, and he might have been just like we were talking before, like ready, like, yeah, I've grown it here. You guys take it and do what you want to with it. I'm happy to give it up. Yeah, that's really cool.
Exactly. And that's even something too for anyone. I've always been building a business from scratch. But
Yeah.
what's nice though, as you continue to evolve in your entrepreneurial journey, is you start to see, hey, maybe there's ways I can save myself a bunch of time, but also money in buying something that's already built up a little bit. And then you can,
Hmm.
and then you could input your systems, your processes, your skill set to help accelerate the growth. Because everybody knows, anyone who started a business knows, like the first 6 to 12 months are incredibly difficult, time consuming. You're doing a lot of that work. That's not always the most exciting work, where if
Hmm.
you can chop off some of that and just input your systems, it can save you a lot of time, but also a lot of money. So if you ever see a brand, you're like, hey, this is an interesting brand. I like what they're doing here. Reach out to the owner. You never know if they're going to be willing to sell it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah, it's something I never think about. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. So let's talk about the Airbnbs. How do you get them cheaper? Tell us. Tell us your tricks. I know you've got a tool to help us too that we'll share with everybody, but how do you do it? Running your own practice is hard. That's where Owl Practice swoops in. Owl is a comprehensive HIPAA compliant solution created specifically with mental health providers in mind to help you. Meet with your clients virtually through video therapy, manage client appointments and client records seamlessly, streamline your claims process with Owl's integrated insurance and claim capabilities, and communicate with clients securely through Owl's client portal. Let Owl handle the heavy lifting so you can provide quality care to your clients. Visit owlpractice.com/Kim Tolson to claim a special offer of 50% off your first 6 months.
Yeah, so it's really simple. You just find your Airbnbs, and you have to understand the market a little bit, of course. But as long as you want to message the host directly. Now, the challenge is if it's run by like a developer or property manager, sometimes it's a lot more
Yeah.
difficult.
Mhm.
They tend to be a lot more challenging to get deals from. But when you
Okay.
do find the owners, that's where you can negotiate some really good deals on it. So I don't encourage anyone to necessarily go off Airbnb, but sometimes if they do want to take it off Airbnb, that's your
Yeah.
decision. There's a little bit of risk, of course, to that because it's off the platform, but that's one way to save some money. But the approach that we would always take is we would just message the host and just say, hey, introducing myself here. My name is Adam. I'm a traveling entrepreneur. I love your place. It's a little bit out of my budget. Would you be open to X amount instead? I'm a great guest. Please see my reviews. I will give you a 5-star review. I'll be a respectful guest. I'll help out if you need anything. Please let me know if this is possible. And this is helpful. Like
Nice.
I don't know how many reviews I have at this point, but they're very good reviews.
Mhm.
So that of course helps. So anyone who has great reviews, of course, you want to leverage that. That's value that you have.
Yeah,
And then
like
of
say,
course,
like, check out my profile. You could see I'm a great guest, like that whole thing. Okay. Mhm.
exactly. And I'm willing to stay for a month or for 2 months. Are you able to give me a deal? And then they might throw out a number and then you could just negotiate with that. But it is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly rare that we don't at least get something taken off.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've tried that before. And I've heard that. That's a good point. Like if you can go off the app or even sometimes people have websites for their properties. Like if,
Mhm.
if you see something on Airbnb that you really like, I've kind of like researched, just Googled around and you can sometimes find the website and get it much cheaper that way too. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. But never just buy. Sometimes
Yeah.
if a place is like super high in demand, like when we spent 5 weeks in Positano, Italy, and the Amalfi Coast this past summer, and it was during the high period, it was, August and the beginning of September. That's the busiest time to go there. So it was a lot harder to get a discount, but we still saved some money by just reaching out to the host. And he's a great guy. We become friends. And next year we might stay in the same place and do it off the app. And I'm sure he'll give an even better deal. But always reach out to the host because what they want is they want most of the time. They just don't want a headache. They want a
Mhm.
good guest. They want longer stays. And if you just ask, most of the time they're going to say yes to you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where you booked a month and then you were like, "I gotta get out of here. This is terrible." Because
Twice.
that happened to us. We used to book months at a time, right? And then, like, twice, we got in these terrible situations and we had to, like, contact Airbnb to get us out of it, but just have you had that happen? Because that's, like, basically scared us away from doing these longer stays because you never know what you're gonna get in these places sometimes. So I don't know if you've had to deal with that or how you deal with that?
Oh, yeah. Fortunately, it hasn't happened often, but it has happened twice.
Mm.
One time it was in the south of France. We were going to Cannes, and it was my business partner, myself, and my sister. We were traveling together at the time. So it was important. We had a three bedroom, and at least it was at least two good full baths. I think we might have even said three bed, three bath. And it was the first time a listing just full on lie. It
Oh
said it was three
gosh.
bedroom, three bath, and ended up being one bathroom was just a toilet, one
Oh,
bathroom was just a shower, the other bathroom was just a sink. So it was just a full on line. It said three full bathrooms. There was other stuff that it was totally
wow.
inaccurate. Luckily, we ended up getting out of it. And luckily, we ended up getting our money back. However, it was way more difficult of a process than I could have ever imagined. I thought it was going to be the most simple, cut and dry case because it
Mhm.
wasn't that we just didn't like the place. It was that they just full on lied about the whole place.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest nightmare I've had with an Airbnb, just because it was so uncertain for about 2 weeks if we were even going to get our money back for it.
Oh my
But
gosh. Right.
luckily, we found a much better place. We did get our money back from it. So Airbnb did come through. And then I had one other bad experience recently in London. And I basically just we paid the host off to just let us
Oh,
leave early, which was also
wow.
not a good situation because we felt like it was a dishonest host. The biggest thing we look at now
Mhm.
when I travel, at least what's important to me, is location more than anything.
Yeah.
So always check out the location, especially when you're going to areas you really don't know all that well. So if you're in a great location, you'll always have a pretty good idea what the apartment looks like. Sure, the
Mhm.
photos might be better than it actually is in real life. The location for us is always number one. That's become our biggest non-negotiable.
Nice. Yeah, slowly over time, we're, like, developing, like you said, non-negotiables. It's like, if we're in a condo or apartment, we're always on the top floor now because every
Mhm.
time we get, like, a 2nd floor, 3rd floor or something, there's somebody above you, inevitably, there's always, like, crazy noise or something, so we're starting to slowly build that list too, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you start to learn these things of, hey, this probably is a place that's going to have super cheap everything or cheap Wi-Fi. That's another really big thing, especially for anyone
Mhm.
who's a digital nomad. Wi-Fi is so important. So that's another thing that I'll always ask is how fast
Yeah,
is your Wi-Fi? Because I've been in situations too where the Wi-Fi is not good and
that
you
is a
have to,
nightmare.
right, you have to find other solutions at that point because that's the worst. I've been in places for 2 months where the Wi-Fi for the whole 2 months was just a pain in the
Oh my
uterine.
god. I get so stressed out. I mean, it's just it stresses me out so much when I've got, like, meetings stacked and then you get to a place and they're like, because we always ask too, and half the time they say, "Well, I can't get you a speed test. I'm not in the unit," or something like that. So, of course, I'm like, "Okay, they're saying it's fast. They can't get us a speed test," but inevitably, sometimes you get there and it's terrible. And
Mhm.
to me, that is, like, so freaking stressful. Because I mean, we're running businesses, right? We have to have meetings all the time, like good connected Zoom meetings. Yeah, that's the worst. So, do you have any fixes around that or like tips or tricks around like if you get in a place and the internet's terrible, any ideas or suggestions for anybody listening?
Yeah, I was in Montenegro for 2 months this past
Mm,
summer, and the place was great, but the Wi-Fi just was not good, and there was nothing that they could do to fix it. So I bought one of those, like, external Wi-Fi modems that you could plug into your computer, and that definitely helped a little bit. But, truthfully, for about 2 months, the Wi-Fi was shaky, and I do a lot of Zoom calls. I'll do podcasts. Like, it definitely made those 2 months a lot more challenging because the nice thing about being in person, or one of the many nice things about being in person, is that there's no break in connection, just a free
mm,
flowing conversation. It's
right.
really difficult to build a connection through Zoom when there's spaces between everything, or the
Yes.
Wi-Fi is choppy and you're talking all over each other.
Ugh.
So the Wi-Fi is so, so, so important for anybody running a digital business, especially if there's a lot of conversations like this, for the Wi-Fi to be as good as possible.
Mhm. Absolutely. Have you tried those eSIMs? I keep seeing these eSIM cards. I don't know if you've used them or not. No, you haven't tried them yet. Yeah, I'm curious about that. Next time we go out of the country, I think I'm going to give that a try because it seems like it could be a good solution for different locations. But yeah, that's our biggest pain point really is the internet. It's like, God, please be good with the internet. They'll say, oh, it's one person was like, it's 10 up and 5 down. I'm like, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Great
exactly.
internet, 10 up and 5 down. It's like, no, that's not great. Yeah.
Yeah, the workspace setup is so important because that's one of the key things I hear about a lot is I was actually just talking to one of my buddies and he was saying yesterday that the biggest challenge he would have about living a digital life is trying to get a new workspace. And that
Yeah.
is a big challenge. It's like, that's a key thing for me. That's why I like being in a spot for at least a month at a time is I
Mhm.
want to make sure I have my workspace, have my ring light set up, have a comfortable place to work out of, have good Wi-Fi, have a good backdrop. That's such an important thing for anyone traveling because again, what we're doing here is
Yeah.
such a big part of so many of our jobs, especially if you're a therapist. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know how you imagine having choppy Wi-Fi as a therapist. Imagine having
Oh,
a bad backdrop or bad lighting. It severely damages your ability to do the best job possible.
it really does. Yeah, we talk about that a lot, like in the traveling therapist Facebook group. It's so hard with our clients. And I mean, most of my clients at this point know I travel and that the Wi-Fi might not be reliable. So they're pretty understanding about it. But I only see a few clients now. But a lot of the listeners have full caseloads, and they're trying to go to like Montenegro. If you get there and you're there for 2 months, what are you going to do? You got to find somewhere, but it also has to be HIPAA compliant environment. Like we can't just sit in coffee
Mm,
shops and have therapy
right.
sessions. So it's like so complicated sometimes. But yeah, that's why I was asking like tips or tricks because everybody always wants to know that.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah, but
important. It's so important.
yeah. And I mean, really, if you get in a place, I feel like just like the bathroom thing, if they tell you there's good Wi-Fi and there's not, I mean, that's a deal breaker to me. Sometimes it's like, I need my money back. This isn't going to work, you know?
Yeah, and that is the challenge where I've always had great experiences for the most part with Airbnb, but I was very surprised at that experience that it wasn't easy to get my money back. And even this
Oh,
last experience, like it was a big pain to even
mm,
get out of it, period, even with paying them more than I should have paid them to get out of that last place because the Wi-Fi wasn't good. A lot of stuff that they described it as wasn't actually the case. So just that's why it's so important. You do pick a place on Airbnb, try to really do your due diligence because getting out of it is going to be a bigger headache.
and like you said before, I mean, sometimes you can go off the app and negotiate and get rates dropped or whatever, but also I'm glad you mentioned that because it puts you at risk too,
Mhm.
because they will say in their terms of service, if you go off the app, it negates any kind of like dispute that you would want to do with somebody. So those are things to keep in mind because it seems like there are owners sometimes that want to really force you to go off the app. Like sometimes they have like these rental company like agreements off the app and they're forcing you to go off a lot of times. So that's kind of a red flag that we've discovered, because if you have a dispute, there's no evidence of it, if you're not like in the chat on Airbnb. So it's tough. This stuff's tough to negotiate. You just don't want to get in a bad situation and not be able to get out of it really.
Yeah,
So
and that's
yeah.
why a lot of it is if there's a lot of red flags. I'm sure you've seen a lot, Kim, and I've seen a lot too on Airbnb where there's a lot of red flags where you want to just put up your spidey senses to say, is this real or is there something going on? One of those red flags would be if right away they're like, let's take this off the app.
Yes.
Why do you want to take it off the app? There's no reviews. Why are there no reviews? Why if the pictures look a certain way?
Mm.
Why do these or sorry, if there's not a lot of pictures, why are there not a lot of photos? So there's a lot of these different red flags that you can start to pick up on that might give you a little bit of an uneasy feeling. But
Yeah.
a lot of time, very rarely when I negotiate, will I take it off the app. Usually it's all paid through the app. So again, just the key though is just ask. People want
Yeah.
good tenants. They want 5-star reviews. So just ask.
hmm So what's your recommended percentage off? Do you have like a rule like, okay, I'm going to ask for 10% off every time or 20 or 30%? Or are you like sort of taking into account, it's high season, there's a lot of availability in the area. Like, are you kind of looking at that before you make an offer around percentage off?
Yeah, it
Mhm.
really depends, but usually like 20%. 20% is a good rule of
Okay.
thumb. And maybe you ask for
Okay.
30%, they ask for 10%, you settle on 20%. But even in the GPT that I'll share, there's a whole back and forth negotiation that the GPT will do for you.
Oh, I love that.
So like if you put in the different information like, hey, here's the location, here's features I like about the home. Here's my name, here's what I'm asking for. And then you send that to the host. And then the
Yeah.
host replies and says, hey, sorry, the most I could do is 10% off or whatever the number is. If you put that into ChatGPT, then our prompt will then say, here's how you should respond.
I love that.
So like
Oh,
we
I can't
also kind
wait.
of coach it as like a negotiation using a lot of the same negotiation skills that we've learned from, our different businesses, a lot of real estate developments, where negotiation in real estate, for anyone who's been involved in real estate knows how important that is. So yeah, the GPT that we built, which is completely free, it'll take you through the whole negotiation if you want it to.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. And for those of you listening on my other podcast, Run Your Private Practice with I just did a whole episode on building GPTs because I've built like 4 or 5 of them for therapists already. And they're awesome. I mean, they're super helpful, but they're also good lead generators. I don't know if y'all are using it for that at all, but to prompt them to get on newsletters, the people that are using the GPTs, and this is for the entrepreneurs out there. There's tons of ways to even monetize these really helpful GPTs. So, just FYI. It's really, really
100%.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and GPTs, especially when, someone, you trust them, like for you, Kim, it's the GPTs are so important because if you just go into using ChatGPT, and for anyone listening to this, please do not use 3.5. Please pay the $20 a month for GPT-4. It is such a huge difference. But even with GPT-4, like if you put into GPT-4, hey, write me a cold email for X, like I'm this company, I'm trying to reach out to these types of people. The email it's going to spit out is going to be off.
Yeah.
However, we create one of the GPTs we created is a cold email generator. And if you use that, the difference in the quality is going to be so different. And the reason why is because GPT is just all about whoever's giving it the input is what the output is going to be. So like when you trust Kim, you're going to get Kim's style and Kim's expertise in that GPT. But if you don't use Kim's GPT and you just use ChatGPT on its own, the output you're going to get is going to be scattered thoughts from all over the web, which might be good, or it actually might be very low quality. So that's why GPTs, from people like you, Kim, are so important to use.
Yeah. Yeah. You can feed it with all of your expertise and have it basically be a mini clone of all your knowledge about a certain topic, which I love. Yeah. So cool. So I'm going to have you on the other podcast to talk more about GPTs.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adam. This has been super helpful. I can't wait to sign up for your newsletter and share your GPT with everybody and start using your formula for Airbnbs because I'm going to be booking another one next week. So I'm definitely going to try that. I'll have to report back to the audience how it works. But thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Kim. It was a lot of fun being here. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's listening, and get in touch if I could ever be helpful in any way.
And just real quick, how does everybody get a hold of you again if you want to drop some links and stuff? And we'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah. So my email is adam@eocworks.com. If you're interested in digital nomad newsletter, it's thenomadcloud.com. And then the social media site I'm most active on is Instagram. It's just at Adam I. Rosen.
Okay. I'm going to go follow you right after this. Thanks so
Love it.
much.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you loved this episode, please leave a review.